So welcome. This one is sharp testing. Kanaaf har'a boqonnaa sadaffaa hypothesis testing kan jedhu statistics eegalla jechuudha. So warroonni boqonnaa tokkoffaa about sample and the sampling and sampling distribution. Chapter 2 about estimation. Warroonni isin jala darbee duubatti deebitanii laaluu ni dandeessu jechuudha. Har'a boqonnaa sadaffaa about statistical estimation waliin laalla jechuudha. So when it comes to 3.1, all about basic terms, which is all about some definition of terms are there. For example, at times we wish to examine statistical evidence, we determine whether it supports or contradicts a claim that has been made, or we might wish to make concerning the entire population. Kana jechuun gaafa statistical estimation yookaan statistical evidence tokko kaafnu wanni suni claim nuti qabnu sana support gochuu danda'a yookaan immoo karaa biraatiin contradict gochuu danda'a jechuudha. Kanaaf adeemsi contradiction isaa yookaan immoo claim keenya support gochuu isaa check itti goonu statistical hypothesis yookaan immoo hypothesis testing kan jennuun isa sanaan jechuudha. So this is done in somewhat symmetric fashion, analogous to the approach taken in Ethiopian system of criminal justice adopted through the most of the modern world, and we take the statement presumed is to be innocent, this means true, and ask how strongly the evidence contradict our initial assumption. Keenyaaf warra criminalii kana gaafa fudhannu namichi tokko qabame jechuun shakkamaan tokko shakkamaadha jenna malee guutumaan guututti akka badii hojjete aga evidensii sirriitti dhiyeessinutti namichi sun yakkamaadha jechuu hin dandeenyu shakkamaadha malee. Kanaaf adeemsi namichi sun shakkamaa ta'uu danda'a yookaan immoo yakkamaa ta'uu danda'a jennee ittiin hypothesis gas goonu evidence way irratti depend taaniti jechuudha. So this evidence is viewed as being the result of some statistical procedure. Kanaaf evidence kuni statistical procedure garagaraa keessa darbeeti dhumarratti dhugaa ta'uu fi ta'uu dhabuunsaa kan murteeffamu jechuudha. So we calculate the probability that same procedure if carried out with the wallet where the statement is really true, wallet purely due to sampling error, provide evidence at least contradictory to the statement of on the trial as evidence. We have the fact that we see this probability is called significance level. Kana boqonnaa lammaffaarratti ilaaluuf yaalleerra. Wanti tokko gaafa dhugaadha jennu hammam confidence qabu, wanti suni soba gaafa jennus confidence keenya hammam kan jedhu adeemsi ittiin adda baafnu significance level or significance confidence level akka ta'e chapter 2 irratti ilaalleerra. So if it is large, we conclude that the evidence against the statement is weak, since we must acknowledge that it is presumed the world in which the statement is true. Our study would frequently provide such evidence purely due to our exposure to some sampling error. Yeroo tokko tokko amma asirratti guddaan chapter kanatti hubannu gaafa evidence keenya fudhannu sunu error garagaraa hojjechuu dandeenya jechuun nama yakkamaa ta'e yakkamaa miti jechuu dandeenya, nama yakkamaa hin taane immoo yakkamaadha jennee fudhachuu dandeenya. Kuni kan madduu fi sababa sampling error irraa kan ka'eeti jechuudha. Kanaaf akaakuu error as keessatti hojjetaman kan ilaallu ta'a jechuudha. So just as a criminal trial, we never conclude the statement is innocent. At most, we find it no guilty. In other words, our analysis leaves us in one of the two camps. We have strong evidence that the original statement is false, or we do not have such evidence. Therefore, statement becomes true. Therefore, if you wish to make affirmative case for claim, we would force it to take the opposite of that of claim as stated, or we put on the theory. Only this way we conclude at the end that the data, if strong evidence against the criminal ulterior serves as support of the original claim. Kanaaf wanti tokko dhugummaan isaa kan mirkanaa'u strong evidence erga dhiyeessuu dandeenye booda jechuudha. So gabaabumatti statistical hypothesis jechuun is an assumption about the population parameter jechuudha. Is an assumption. Dhugaa jiru miti assumption jechuudha. Kanaaf is an assumption about population parameter is known as statistical hypothesis. This assumption may not be true. Kanaaf dhugaa ta'uu dhabuu danda'a jechuudha. Hypothesis testing refers to the formal procedure used by statistician to accept or reject statistical hypothesis. Kanaaf statistical hypothesis jechuun assumption of population jenneerra dhugaa fi dhugaa ta'uu danda'a yookaan immoo soba ta'uu danda'a jenneerra. Adeemsi dhugaa fi soba isaa ittiin adda baafnu immoo hypothesis testing jedhama jechuudha. Statistical hypothesis, the best way to determine whether statistical hypothesis is true would be examine the entire population. Actually, we have two types of hypothesis. Hypothesis yakaku lamatu jira. Null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis. Jenne bakka lamatti qooduu dandeenya. So null hypothesis jechuun null hypothesis denoted by HO yeroo hunda HO tiin ibsama. Or H0 jechuu dandeessu is usually hypothesis that a sample observation must be purely from the chance. But alternative hypothesis is denoted by H1 or HA and is the hypothesis that the sample observation are influenced by some non-random cause. Kanaaf inni kuni purely from chance jedha inni kun garuu it is influenced by non-random sampling or non-random causing. For example, suppose one to determine whether a coin was fair or balanced, and the null hypothesis might be half of the flips would result head and the half will be tail. So the alternative hypothesis might be that the number of heads and the tail would be very different. Symbolically, this hypothesis can be expressed like this. So here on the null hypothesis in Kenya, wal fakkaata tokko yaada jedhuun yookaan wal qixa ta'aatiin ibsama yeroo baay'ee. Isa kana jechuudha. Keenyaaf saantima tokko gara olii gaafa darbinu probability head itti argannu fi tail itti argannu wal qixaadha. Null hypothesis. Alternative hypothesis immoo yeroo hundaa wal qixaa miti jedha. It is different. Yaada jedhuun ibsama jechuudha. Suppose we flip it a coin 50 times, result 40 head and the tail 10. So give this result, we would be inclined to reject the null hypothesis. We could conclude that based on the evidence that the coin was probably no fair or and balanced. Kanaaf fakkeenyaaf saantima 50 gaafa ol darbinu 40 isaa headii ta'uu danda'a, 10 immoo tailii ta'uu danda'a. Sababa kanaaf null hypothesis keenya yeroo kana maal ta'a kufaa ta'a jechuudha, maaliif wal qixa waan hin taaneef. So we can we accept null hypothesis jedha asirratti. Null hypothesis accept gochuu ni dandeenyaadha. Karaa itti goonutu jira, karaa immoo isa reject itti goonutu jira. Isa sana ilaalla. Dirlarna. Some researchers say that hypothesis test can have one of two outcomes. You may accept the null hypothesis or reject the null hypothesis. Kanum you can accept goal or you can reject goal. So many statisticians, however, take issue with the notion of accepting the null hypothesis instead of saying you reject the null hypothesis or fail to reject the null hypothesis. So accepting null hypothesis, fail to reject the null hypothesis jechuun karaa hundaanuu hiikaa tokko qabachuudha. What's the distinction between acceptance and the failure to reject? Acceptance implies that the null hypothesis is true jechuudha. Failure to reject implies that the data are not sufficiently precise for us to prefer alternative hypothesis over null hypothesis. Look, karaa adda addaatiin saayintistoonni termiilee lamaan kana fayyadamu. Accepting null hypothesis yookaan immoo failure to reject null hypothesis. Garaagarummaa muraasa wayii qabu. Acceptance jechuun 100% null hypothesis keenya dhugaadha, kanaaf fudhadhuudha. Failure to reject jechuun garuu null hypothesis kana reject gochuudhaaf alternative hypothesis gahaa miti jechuudha. So garaagarummaan isaanii guddaan kana. So step one nuti fayyadamnu maayineri hypothesis test gochuuf step in fayyadamnu maal fa'a kan jedhu laala. Dirlarna statistician follow the formal process to determine whether to reject the null hypothesis based on sample data. This process is called hypothesis testing, which consists 4 steps. Kanaaf stepota gurguddoo 4 qaba. Inni tokkoffaan state hypothesis. This involves stating the null and alternate hypothesis. The hypotheses are stated in such a way that they are mutually exclusive. That is, if one is true, the other must be false. they are mutually exclusive jechuun walitti dhufan jechuudha. Inni tokko dhugaa yoo ta'e inni tokko soba. Lamaanuu dhugaa carraa ta'uu hin qaban jechuudha. Kanaaf isa jalqabaa hypothesis keenya state gochuudha. Inni lammaffaa formulate analysis plan. The analysis plan describe how to use sample data to evaluate the null hypothesis. So the evaluation often focuses around a single test static. Test static jechuun sample static akka ta'e simbolle laalli ture. Kanaaf analysis plan keenya ifa clear ta'edha maal gochuu danda'u qabna kaa'uu yookaan baasuu qabna jechuudha. Stepin lammaffaan isa kana. The third step analyzing sample data. Inni sadaffaan immoo analyzing sample data jechuu dandeessu. So here we can find the test static with mean score, proportion, t-score, and the z-score, which can be described as analysis plan. Isaan kanneen test static keenya adda baasuu fi gatii isaanii beekuun step sadaffaan inni afuraffaan interpret the result no apply the decision rule described in the analysis plan. If the value of the test static is unlikely, so during that time the null hypothesis become what? Rejected. So you can reject the null hypothesis if the test static is unlikely. So at the end of the day, interpret gochuu danda'u qabna jechuudha. Interpret gochuu danda'u qabna jechuudha result keenya. So the next one is decision error and the rules in hypothesis testing. Here type of error in hypothesis testing. Kumaree fi dubbanne gaafa hypothesis generate goonu yookaan test goonu errorota garaagaraa hojjenna. Erroroonni gurguddoon hojjennu lama. One is type 1 error, inni lammaffaan immoo type 2 error jennee qoqqooduu dandeenya. So as you know from previous chapter 1, sample information is not the perfect estimators of the population. This fact brings the concept of error in hypothesis testing. So the conclusion we made and the real population fact might be different. This means error in hypothesis can be generated. So there are two types of error in hypothesis testing. One is type 1 error, the other one is type 2 error. Kanaaf maal jennee chapter 1 gaafa barannu waa'ee sample and sample distribution population irratti research hojjechuun hin danda'amu. Gatii guddaa nu gaafata. Yeroo guddaa nurraa fudhata waan ta'eef sample irratti research hojjenneerra. Inni sun immoo guutumaan guutuu waa'ee population sana ibsuu dhabuu danda'a. Sababa kanaaf erroriin kan hojjetamu jechuudha. Kanaaf erroroonni hojjetaman gurguddoon lama type 1 error and type 2 error. Type 1 error occurs when the researcher rejects the null hypothesis when it is true. Kanaaf ishee kana sirriitti beekuun isinirra jira yeroo baay'ee gaaffilee exit exam irratti haphun ta'u gaafa erroroonni kunneeni. Kanaaf null hypothesis keenya reject gaafa goonu garuu sila dhugaa ta'eera. Look, type 1 error kan jennu yeroo researcherri null hypothesis dhugaa ta'e reject godhuudha gabaabumatti. Kana jechuun false alternative hypothesis accept godhee jechuu jirra jechuudha. So the probability of committing type 1 error is called significance level, and this probability is also called alpha and often denoted by alpha. So the other name of type 1 error is known as significance level. Kanaaf type 1 error kan hojjennu yoomi kan jedhuu fi gabaabumatti null hypothesis dhugaa ta'e gaafa reject goonu jechuu dandeessu jechuudha. So null hypothesis dhugaa ta'e reject gochuun type 1 error jedhama jechuudha. Type 2 error immoo faallaa type 1 error. It is an error when researcher fail to reject the null hypothesis when it is false. Kanaaf null hypothesis keenya soba ta'e garuu akka dhugaa ta'etti kan fudhannu yoo ta'e type 1 error, type 2 error commit goona jechuudha. So the probability of committing type 2 error is known as beta, and it's often denoted by this one, and the probability of not committing type 2 error is called power of the test. Power of the test. Kanaaf errorota lamaan kan adda baasuun baay'ee bareeda. So if you reject the hypothesis when it should be accepted, we say type 1 error has been made. If on the other hand we accept the hypothesis when it should be rejected, we say that type 2 error. Kanaaf gabaabumatti type 1 error hojjenne jechuun yeroo hypothesis fudhatamuu qabu reject goone jechuudha. Type 2 error hojjenne kan jennu immoo yeroo hypothesis fudhatamuu hin qabne fudhatamuu jechuudha. Kana bifa kanaan beekuudha gabaabumatti wanni asitti beekuu qabdan isa kana. Here there is a decision rules in hypothesis are there. So the analysis plan includes decision rule for rejecting the null hypothesis. So in practice, statistician describe the decision rule in two ways, with reference to the p-value or with reference to the region of acceptance. Kanaf decision rule gaafa researcher tokko ka statistician tokko gaafa baasu ulaagaa lamaan kanneen irratti yookaan referensoota lamaan kanneen irratti hundaa'uudhaan tokkoffaa p-value isaa irratti inni lammaffaan immoo region of acceptance irratti. P-value gaafa jennu the strength of evidence in support of the null hypothesis is measured by the p-value. Suppose the test static is equal to S and the p-value is the probability of observing the test static as an extreme S, assuming the null hypothesis is what? True. If the p-value is less than the significance level, we reject the null hypothesis. Kanaaf criteria nuti baafnu keessatti tokko p-value. Kanaaf p-value keenya gaafa murteessinu immoo significance level isaa of null hypothesis keenya maal ta'uu qaba. Fakkeenyaaf p-value keenya 0.05 gadi yoo ta'e maybe you can accept the null hypothesis ta'uu danda'a jechuudha. Kanaaf asitti maal jedha? If p-value or the p-value is the probability of observing test static at extreme S, assuming the null hypothesis is true. If p-value is less than significance level, we reject the null hypothesis. If p-value is greater than the significance level, we may accept the null hypothesis. In turn, more rejection of region of acceptance. The region of acceptance is the range of value. If the test static fall within the region of acceptance, then the null hypothesis is what? Not rejected, meaning accepted. So the region of acceptance is defined as that the chance of making type 1 error is equal to that of the significance level. Region of acceptance keenya keessatti result nuti finnu isa jidduutti kan argamu taanaan maybe error of committing type 1 error keenya minimize gochaa irraa jechuudha. The set of value outside the region of acceptance is called the region of rejection. If the test static fall within the region of rejection, the null hypothesis is now rejected. In such case, we say that the hypothesis has been rejected at alpha level of significance. Alpha level of significance. Kanaaf hypothesis test gochuuf steepoota jiran erga follow goone booda acceptance criteria keenya murteeffachuu danda'u qabna. Acceptance criteria keenya karaa lamaan tokkoffaa p-value inni lammaffaa immoo region of acceptance keenya murteeffachuu. So the other one is one-tailed and the two-tailed hypotheses are there. Hypothesis karaa lamaan ammas qooduu dandeenya. One-tailed test and the two-tailed test. So the test of statistical hypothesis where the region of rejection is on only one side of the sampling distribution we call one-tailed test jenna jechuudha. Kanaaf hypothesis keenya region of rejection isaa kallattii tokko qofa yookaan sampling distribution kallattii tokko qofa ka ta'e taana one-tailed test jennaani, karaa lamaan ta'e taanaan immoo two-tailed jenna jechuudha. So one-tailed test hypothesis test further can be classified as right one-tailed test and left one-tailed test jennee bakka lamatti qooduu dandeenya. So the best to decide the type of test is mainly the sign of comparison with an alternative hypothesis is part. So for example, suppose the null hypothesis says that the mean is less than or equal to 10. So the alternative hypothesis would be the mean is greater than 10. The region of rejection would consist of the range of numbers located on the right side of the sampling distribution, that is sets of number greater than what? 10 jechuudha. Kanaaf kana gaafa symbolically keenyu especially null hypothesis keenya man alternative hypothesis keenya maal ta'uu qaba danda'a? Irra xiqqaa yookaan walqixa yookaan irra xiqqaa, irra guddaa yookaan walqixa yookaan irra guddaa yookaan immoo does not be equivalent ta'a. So gaafa irra xiqqaa yookaan walqixa yookaan immoo irra xiqqaa mallattoo kana kan qabaatu taanaan left one-tailed test jennaani, irra guddaa yookaan walqixa yookaan immoo irra guddaa ta'e taanaan immoo right one-tailed test jennaani, gaafa walqixa miti ta'e taanaan immoo two-tailed test jennaan. Kanaaf saayinii alternative test hypothesis keenya ilaallee one-tailed test left one-tailed test or right one-tailed test jechuu dandeenya. Akkasumas two-tailed test jechuus ni dandeenya jechuudha. Kanaaf saayiniin kuni baay'ee murteessaadha jechuudha. Fakkeenyaaf asitti kana ilaaluu dandeessu. Identify type of tail test for the following pair of hypotheses. So if P is greater than 0.4 and the alternative hypothesis state that P is greater than or equal to 0.45. Kana jechuun asumatti dhuftanii ilaaluu dandeessu. Right one tail test dha. Inni lammaffaan immoo left one tail test dha. Inni kun immoo exactly what? Two tail test dha. Isa kanniin ilaaltan inni gara mirgaa is null hypothesis dha. Null hypothesis yeroo hundaa bifa kanaan ibsama. Isin focus kan gootan alternative hypothesis kanarratti saayiin isaa laatu. Akkuma reefu dubbanne right one tail test because of the alternative hypothesis have this sign, and the left one tail test because the alternative hypothesis have this sign, and the two tail test because the alternative hypothesis have this sign. Kanaaf yeroo hundaa null hypothesis keessan saayiin isaa laaluudhaan one tail test, two tail test, one tail test isanumayyuu right and the left jechuu dandeessu. Hypothesis testing on population mean and the population proportion. So hypothesis testing for a single population mean which are what? Larger sample size, which mean that greater than 13. Larger sample size kan jennu yeroo irra guddaa haasofduma ta'edha. Here the sample information is taken from the sets of population where the population information is fully unknown or difficult to know. Then the assumption will be tested whether it is failed to accept or reject. The sample taken from the population is assumed to be large, which means that greater than 13. If the standard deviation of the population is already known, then based on the central limit theorem of the sampling distribution of the mean, we would follow the standard normal distribution for a larger sample size. So Z static become Z equivalent to sample mean minus population mean over standard error of the mean, which means that can be as given like this. Yes, because ishee kana bifa kana calculate akka goonu laaleetu kee waan ta'eef sanadee. In this formula, the numerator measure how far the observed sample mean is from the hypothesis mean, and the denominator this is standard error of the mean, so that Z statistics represent how many standard error is from population mean. Kan jedhu mean calculation kun. So if the population standard deviation is unknown and the sample standard deviation is already given, we have to estimate the population standard deviation by using this test statics as like this. Yeah, so we can use this formula if population standard deviation is not. Bifa kanaanis calculate gochuu dandeessu jechuudha gaafa population standard deviation isiniif hin kennamne jechuudha. For example, a packaging device is said to fill a detergent powder packet with a mean weight of 5 kg. So the standard deviation is known, which is 0.01 kg. These are known to drift upward over the period of time due to machine fault, which is not tolerable. And a random sample of 100 packet is taken and weighted. This sample has a mean weight of 5.03, the standard deviation of this one. Can we conclude that the mean weight produced by the machine has increased? Use 5% level of significance. Kanaaf alpha value nu kennameera, population mean nu kennameera, sample mean nu kennameera, population standard deviation nu kennameera, again sample standard deviation nu kennameera. Kanaaf amma can we conclude the mean weight of the produced by the machine is increased or not? So now stepboota afran sana follow gochuudhaan determine gochuuf yaalla jechuudha. So the mean weight has not increased or equivalent to 5 ta'e taanaan null hypothesis keenya formulate goonee irra jechuudha. Alternative hypothesis keenya immoo irra guddaa jedhee eegala jechuudha. The mean weight has increased waan jedhuuf asirratti isa sana akka alternative hypothesis itti fudhanna. Kanaaf kennamaa keenya erga baafannee booda sample size nu kennameera, mean of standard of the sample, standard of sample again, and this one is alpha value. Here the appropriate test static here is Z. Now Z statics is our appropriate test for this type of case because the population standard deviation is unknown and as a sample size large. Kanaaf erga test static keenya adda baafannee booda decision rule keenya kaa'anna jechuudha. Accept the null hypothesis if Z calculator is less than Z table jennee bifa kanaan erga baafannee booda Z calculated keenya barbaadna jechuudha. Z calculated keenya mean of sample over minus mean of population over standard error dha. Hundi isaaniitu kennamaadha waan ta'eef kallattiimaan gatii kana arganna. Table keenya irra deemnee immoo Z value keenya akkaataa chapter 2 irratti barbaadu sanaan lakkoofsa kana arganna jechuudha. Amma isaan lamaan kanneen compare gochuudha. Erga kana compare gootan booda decision rule keessan biratti dhufu. Z calculated keessan irra xiqqaa Z table ta'e taanaan null hypothesis keessan accept gootu, otherwise reject gootu jechuudha. Kanaaf calculated value keenya irra xiqqaa kana waan ta'eef null hypothesis keessan maal ta'e jechuudha? Accept ta'e jechuudha. So the decision here is the null hypothesis is accepted, which means that the mean weight does not increase. Enough. Bifa kanaan hypothesis test gochuu ni dandeenya jechuudha. So the next is all about hypothesis testing for single population mean if sample size is small. Kana jechuun immoo sample size keenya 30 gadi yoo ta'e hoo akkam goonaa kan jedhu ilaalla jechuudha. So in the previous discussion we employed about standard normal distribution or Z test because the sample size is very large. If the sample size is no greater than 30, it is preferable to use student test. Amma T distribution fayyadamna gaafa sample keenya size keenya very large ta'e fi population standard deviation is unknown gaafa ta'e gabaabumatti Z test fayyadamna. Gaafa population size keenya immoo 30 gadi kan ta'u taanaan student distribution fayyadamna jechuudha. Thus test statistics for determining the difference between the sample mean and the population mean is given like this. T equivalent to x bar minus mu x over sx. It's the same formula actually, but have slightly different here. Where S is unbiased estimation of unknown population standard deviation, and this test statistics has a T distribution with n minus 1 degree of freedom. Degree of freedom immoo fayyadamna jechuudha. Here n minus 1 is degree of freedom. For example, suppose the average breaking strength of steel rod is specified 80.5 thousand. For this sample, 40 rod was tested. The standard deviation obtained were given like this. Respectively, the test significance level is actually 5. So how we can test this hypothesis? Kanaaf gaafii inu kenname kennamaa isaa erga sirriitti hubanne booda gara testii keenya deemna jechuudha. Let's take the null hypothesis that there is no significant deviation in the breaking strength of the rod. But the alternative hypothesis is definitely say that there is a significant deviation in the breaking strength of the rod. Kanaaf so null hypothesis keenya isa kana ta'a. Alternative hypothesis immoo kana ta'a jechuudha. Gaafa kana laaltan maal yaadattu? Two-tail testii yaadattu jechuudha. So types of test is what? Two-tail test. So inni nu kennameera x bar and s is also given. Degree of freedom simply n minus 1, that is 30. Alpha value is already given. Nu kennameera. Since two-tail testii waan fayyadamnuuf alpha value keenya bakka wal qixa lamatti qooduun nurra jira jechuudha. Isa lakkoofsa kana bakka lamaaf irraa gabaabumatti duwwaa tuqa lama shan kan arganna jechuudha. Since the size of the sample is smaller and the population standard deviation is unknown, estimated using sample deviation. Hence, appropriate test is as usual T test jenneerra reefu. Kanaaf decision rule keenya baafanna. T calculated keenya is between minus 2.16 and 2.6. Accept the null hypothesis. Otherwise, reject jechuusaati. Else reject jechuusa. Kanaaf T calculated keenya erga calculate goone booda range jidduu kan arganne taanaan maaliif two-tail test waan ta'eef lakkoofsi kun karaa bitaa fi karaa mirgaa waan jiruuf jidduu kan arganne taanaan accept goona, otherwise immoo reject goona jechuudha. So this one is your normal distribution graph which is a bell shape jenneerra. Kanaaf jidduu kana argame taanaan accept goona, otherwise immoo reject goona. Kanaaf calculate gaafa goonu result nuti argannu this number. Therefore this number in this range? Definitely no. Therefore, the decision says that there is no significant deviation of the sample mean from population mean. Therefore, the null hypothesis was accepted. the null hypothesis accepted. T calculated this one, T table is this one. And therefore, your null hypothesis should be accepted. Malifi lakkoofsi kun jidduu kanatti argama jechuudha. Jidduu kana naannoo kanatti argama almost. Yes, most naannoo kanatti argama waan ta'eef karaa fi kana gidduutti waan argamuuf null hypothesis keenya accept ta'e jechuudha. So in it hypothesis testing for single population proportion. Single proportion almost estimation case at the P Q. So we have now how to conclude conduct hypothesis test for the mean. Now we turn up our population, our proportion. So the process is completely analogous, although we will need to use standard deviation from that of proportion. Sometimes instead of testing hypothesis pertaining to population mean, the population proportion P of value of particular category is considered. For this, random sample of size n is selected to compute the proportion of success in particular sample. Therefore, number of success in a sample over sample size, that means x over n. So at the end of the day, you get to conduct the test of hypothesis. It is assumed that the sampling distribution of the proportion follows standard normal distribution, and then the value of the sample proportion P bar and the standard deviation, this one can be used to calculate what Z static by using this formula. Yeah, P bar minus P over root of PQ over A. Yeah. For example, suppose the manufacturer claims that at least 95% of the equipment which is supplied on the factory confirms specification. An examination of the sample, this piece of equipment revealed that 80 were faulty. So this is the claim of the manufacturer. So alternative hypothesis in Kenya, null hypothesis in Kenya, greater than or equal to 95, 0.95 alternative hypothesis anymore, you get less than 0.95 Any Kenya look in the mirror. Now is calculate go to Z calculate go on. Now here our null hypothesis is this one, and this one is the alternative hypothesis. Finally, the percent of piece of confronting specification is simply 1 minus 80 over this one, that is 0.91, and I have to get Q, simply 1 minus this number. Now N is this one, and the level of significance already given again. Therefore, here the decision rule says that accept the null hypothesis if Z calculated is less than Z table. So you can calculate like this: Z equivalent to this number minus this over root of this one, which means what? Minus 2.67, and the table value for Z 0.025 is known as this one. Now we have to compare and decide to reject the null hypothesis because of Z is less than Z tab, which is within the area of rejection. Hence, we conclude that the proportion of equipment confronting specification is not what? 95%. Therefore, now alternative hypothesis is accepted, but null hypothesis should be rejected. So, hanga amma kan laalle yoo single population yoo ta'e fi single proportion yoo ta'e gaafa two mean yoo qabaannu meaning keenya lama gaafa ta'e immoo maal goonaa jedha. So here testing the difference implies checking the presence or absence of difference and their direction of comparison of population parameter based on the sample information taken to different target population jedha. Kanaaf amma meaning lamaan gidduutti hariiroon jiru maal fakkaata kan jedhu compare gochuudha jechuudha. Gabaabumatti kallattii gara mathematically isaatti adeemnu. So mean of x bar minus x bar 2 equivalent to 0 because there is no mean difference. Now standard error of the mean given by like this one. So by using these two formula we can determine whether the difference are there or not. Have a look at this example. Do employees perform better at work with music playing? Music hojjettoonni hojii sirriitti hojjetu moo hojjetaniidha gaaffii kana prove goona. Thus the music was turned during the working hours of the business with 45 employees. Kanaaf namoota 45 bakka hojii jiranii muuziqaan baname. Their productivity level averaged 5.2 within the standard deviation of this one. And on the different day, the music was turned off. Amma music cufan namoota 40tu gaafa sana jira jechuudha. So worker productivity level isaanii average-dhaan 4.8. Standard deviation immoo 1.2. Kanaaf significance level keenya immoo duwwaa 5 yookaan 5% yoo ta'e muuziqaa taphasiisaa hojjechuun hojiidhaaf performansiin isaa ni dabalamu hin dabalu kan jedhu prove goona jechuudha. So come here, first we develop hypothesis. Develop goona kana jechuun hypothesis keenya akkuma barame the mean 1 minus mean 2 is less than or equal to 0 jedha. Alternate hypothesis keenya immoo greater than 0 jedha. So now here we can deduct mean 1 and the mean 2. We get this number, and the standard error is also calculated by using this formula like this. And finally now we have to calculate t-score. T-score you can calculate x1 minus x2 minus standard error of the mean 1 to mean 2 over standard error of the two population. So if your value is in the range of this, you can accept, otherwise you can reject. Region kana keessa galee jechuun rejection area keessa galee jechuudha. T of table keenya kennameera 1.69. 1.69. So to decide whether to accept or reject the null hypothesis, it is mandatory to determine both T calculated and T tabulated and finally compare what? The two value. Here T calculated is the value of t-score obtained from the table considering the degree of freedom and the level of significance. And to calculate the degree of freedom, we can take smaller number of the two, n1 minus 1 and n2 minus 1. So in this case 39 was the degree of freedom. Amma n lamatu kenname population lamatu kenname 45. Kanaaf isaan lamaan irraayyuu degree of freedom eegaa barbaanne booda degree of freedom xiqqaatee fudhanna jechuudha. Kanaaf 45 irruu takka 40 irruu takka 39 kana akka degree of freedom itti fudhanna jechuudha gaafa population lamatu kenname. So the table value will be this one for t 0.95. Notice this value is still smaller than this, and the result is the same. Since t score is smaller than this, we fail to reject the null hypothesis. We have to accept what the what actually here there is insufficient evidence to make the conclusion about employees performing better at work with music. Actually here fail to accept goal malee accept hin jenne maaliif evidence hin gahaan hin jiru. Muuziqaa taphsiisaa hojjechuun akka performance dabalu evidence gahaa hin arganne. Lakkoofsa kana calculate goone range kana gidduutti waan dhufeef accept goone yookaan immoo fail to reject goone malee guutumaan guutuutti accept gochuudhaaf evidence gahaa hin arganne. Sababa kanaaf fail to reject jenne jechuudha. Reefu laalleerra fail to reject inda acceptance garaagarummaa akka qabu jechuudha. Inni lammaffaa population proportion dha. Innis akkuma reefu sana gabaabumatti standard error of the proportion in barbaanna san booda z statistics isaanii calculate goone jechuudha. Z statistics keenya erga calculate goone booda you have to estimate the full estimate like n1 p1 plus n2 p2 over n1 plus n2, and the z static can be then reacted like this. Yes, you have to use this formula, simply p1 minus p2 over standard error of p1 minus p2 where p is proportion. Have a look here example. Suppose that a company is considering two different television advertisements for promotion of a new product. The management believes that advertisement A is more effective than advertisement B. The two test market area with virtually identical consumer characteristics are selected. Advertisement A is used in one area and advertisement B is more than another area. The random sample of 60 customers who saw advertisement A and 80 had tried to product. A random sample of 100 customers who saw advertisement B and 22 had tried the product. Does this indicate that advertisement A is more effective than advertisement B? If 5% significance level is used. Amma maal goone irratti kaampaanii tokkotu product isaa beeksifachuu barbaade jechuudha. Kana gochuudhaaf immoo televizyinii lama filate. Kanaaf televizyinii lamaan irratti productiin bakka garaagaraatti beeksifamu jechuudha. Namoonni promotionii karaa televizyinii Atiin darbee ilaalan namoota 60 ture. Sana keessaa 18 productii sana bitanii. Namoonni dhibbaa randomly select godhamanii kan advertisement karaa Btiin darbee ilaalanii. Isaan keessa 22 producticha fayyadamaniiru. Kanaaf advertisement lamaan keessaa een more effective dha jechuu dandeenyaadha. 5 double of significance irratti. Kanaaf jalqaba hypothesis keenya maal goona generate goona. Null hypothesis keenya proportion 1 is equivalent to proportion 2. If P1 is associated with what? A and P2 is associated with what? B. Alternative hypothesis keenya mo proportion 1 is greater than proportion 2. Therefore, N1 keenya 60, P1 keenya 18 over 60 ta'a. N2 keenya 100, P2 keenya 22 over 100. So now, alpha keenya kennameera, Z static keenya calculate gochuudhaan gatii isaa arganna jechuudha. This formula. So at the end of the day, you have to guess this one, and the standard error can be calculated by using this formula, or simply Q bar is equal to 1 minus P bar. By using this formula, you get this number. So now, you have to accept null hypothesis because they calculated is less than Z tabulated. They calculated is less than Z tabulated tanan decision in Kenya Malta acceptance of null hypothesis. So come here and see the result. So substituting the Z statics, Z calculated can be 0.3 minus 0.22 over this number, which equivalent to this one. Kabomat P bar minus Q bar divided for standard error. Most formula kana keessatti buusneet ilaalla jechuudha. Z tabulated keenya immoo at alpha 0.05 isa kana qaba. So now we can compare this number and this number. Therefore, there is no significant difference in effectiveness of the two advertisement, meaning here the null hypothesis should be what? Accepted. Null hypothesis keenya maal ta'eera ammas irratti accepted ta'eera jechuudha. Accepted ta'eera. So you have to accept the null hypothesis since Z calculated is less than Z tabulated jechuu dandeessu jechuudha. So you have to accept your null hypothesis. So this is all about statistical hypothesis estimation or chapter 3. Kanaaf graafii keeka yoo qabaattan comment section jalatti nu kaaya. Chapter 4 ammoo yeroo itti aanu qabannee kan wal arginu ta'a jechuudha. Kanaaf statistics kuni especially hypothesis sampling and sample distribution chapter 1 akkasumas chapter 3 chapter 4 baay'ee murteessaa fi kanneen exit exam irratti happen ta'anidha. Chapter 5 fi chapter 6 dabalatee jechuudha. Kanaaf sirriitti hordofaa. Gaaffii yoo qabaattan qeeqa yoo qabaattan komentii jalatti nu kaa'uu hin dagatinaa. Nutis fooyyessaatu deemna jechuudha. Kanaaf wantoota koorsiilee exit exaamiidhaaf prepare godhan especially for business management, business school students, for like management, business administration, accounting even, marketing. Saalan kanneen koorsii baay'ee murteessaa waan ta'eef sirriitti hordofuu qabnu jechuudha. Exit exam irratti yeroo baay'ee haffa waan goonee fi chapteriin amma ilaalaa jirru kun jechuudha. So you have to identify yeroo baay'ee erroroota jiran type 1 error, type 2 error jechuun maal jechuudha. Hypothesis test gaafa goonu steppileen fayyadamnu maal fa'aadha. Gaafa saampliin keenya garmalee large ta'e maal fayyadamna. Z test fayyadamna, multi statics fayyadamna. akkamitti accept goona akkamitti immoo reject goona kan jedhu sirriitti adda baasuun baay'ee barbaachisaadha jechuudha. Gaafa population keenya standard deviation isaa kenname akkam goona standard deviation isaa nu kennamu taanaan immoo akkam goonee calculate goona kan jedhu sirriitti beekuu qabdu jechuudha. Kanaaf chapter 4 wal argina. Agasiifuu galatooma.